Namaste. So, like a week ago, I made a video discussing the difference between the male and the female energy bodies. I don't know how many people saw it yet, but well, I have a feeling that the video wasn't adequate because having tried to explain, first of all, I want you to understand for men or women that are listening, for men to understand, for any women they try to help, or maybe they're in a relationship with or something, and for women to understand for themselves. This is an incredibly subtle thing that I'm talking about. It is very, very difficult to see. Okay, so, and I want to try to explain it from a different perspective too. So, the first thing that I said in the first video, the main point of it was that, all right, let's start from where I woke up. So, when I woke up, the basic thing that I woke up during meditation. I woke up in a moment that I can remember. One experience in particular. What that experience was I was meditating, and while observing my thoughts, sitting outside myself, basically, observing my thoughts. And from the position of observation, meaning I was watching my thoughts, I became aware of myself watching them for the first time, instead of just paying so much attention and being captivated by the thoughts. For the first time, I realized that I was something distant from them. And then that space, when I became aware of the space between me and my thoughts, it seemed to expand until I was quite a ways away from them. And then suddenly it was clear that I was looking at something very distant from me, this mind that was thinking. And so I could not be it. And in fact, I was all around it. I was the space that encompassed it, and encompassed that thought. And then bam, everything changed. I remembered, who I was, everything in a second. It all came flooding. I didn't retain all that. But and it didn't stay at that level of realization, but I would go up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down for a while until it stabilized somewhere. And then I would go up and down, and I would stabilize at a higher level, and so on. And I did that for a long time, and that's not exactly what I'm doing anymore. I'm in a different phase now. But every time that I would shoot up, the one of the main things, besides an expanded awareness that I would realize that I would experience, was love, joy, bliss. Okay, now I didn't think about it at the time because I didn't understand it at the time, but what was really happening was I was coming into contact with my emotional body for the first time. Not for the first time, because obviously I had experienced emotions before, but I was experiencing my emotional body in a full, unbridled way. And okay, so now as I understand it today, if we think about, all right, let's just change direction for a minute. If we think about everything as light, and we think of source light as just a beam of light, right? Now, do you need to come down here?
What?
Do you need to come down here?
No, I wasn't gonna come down. I just heard no, get out the pee, and I was gonna tell him don't go down yet.
Okay, it's fine. I'm live recording, so okay. If we think about the light as an undifferentiated beam, and then
Yeah, I heard him, so I wasn't gonna go down.
all right, and then in the center of that, okay, sorry, I lost focus. So we think of the light as one undifferentiated beam, right? Then the light splits into its component parts, you know, the red, the blue, the green, the yellow, as it hits a prism, right? What is that prism it hits that causes the light to differentiate? Now, first of all, we'll think of these 5 or the 7 colors, whatever. We think of these colors that it splits up into. There'd probably be many more variations than that. But we think of those colors that it splits into as soul fragments, okay? But there must be something there to cause it to split, right? So the original structure that is formed is the oversoul, basically, or the monad. So this is the original soul structure created by Creator that knows what it is. It knows itself as a part of Creator, an extended part of Creator that's doing something. So, and then now we think of these, we look at the beams of light that split, the blue, the red, the green, you know, and each of these fragments is a soul fragment of that monad, okay? So then, but now, even though this one beam is blue, every light actually contains all of it, right? So viewed from its own position, it will seem as a complete thing, and it will still contain all the elements of all the other lights, you know? So in its own perspective, it won't seem blue, and it will experience shades of the others within its experience, although the blue experience may be predominant. It will be predominant, or the purple experience, or the green experience, or the red experience, you know? So these trajectories will change the soul's purpose, the soul's path, you know? Then the souls create their own structures, okay? Their own egos, their soul fragments. These are us, okay? So when I say these structures, these prisms that they create, how do they actually do it? Because it's only light, right? Everything's light. So now again, we have a beam of light, the soul beam, and this pure light is then hitting a structure. The structure must be made out of light too. So what we do is we take this little bit of light, and instead of letting it flow, we turn it and invert it so it goes against the flow. So now it's hitting and creating a blockage, a stream. So the original structure was just enough that it could be seen as a structure. Things were hitting it. So it was still distortions, but it was a perfectly designed thing. If you looked at it, it would look like the flower of life, or one of these geometrically perfect snowflake symbols, you know? It's a perfect representation of you, this symbol. So, so then we've still got light flowing through. It's hitting the structure. You can see the structure, and that's you, that vibration, right? But then when this structure comes into awareness in the world, in its experience, it starts to take on the ideas and the structures, the distortions of the other flakes, because it's told to, because it's gone through the forgetting process. So all of a sudden it starts adding distortions and tangles and knots, and that whole thing gets, instead of being a perfectly designed geometric structure, and when I was saying it, we may have pictured a 2-dimensional structure, but remember, this is a 3-dimensional or more structure, a higher dimensional structure. So this thing starts to get tangled and tangled and tangled and tangled more and more. It starts adding distortions, and less light starts to come through. As less light starts to come through the structure, that means less intelligence, less wisdom is coming through. More is getting taken on from the outer structure, and this is happening as at childhood when they're young. Eventually, what happens is the light completely stops. The structure gets so tangled that the light completely stops. Now it's just darkness on one side. So now the structure finds itself alone. It basically doesn't have any guidance anymore. So now it has no one to turn to but itself. And if you can think of a child that's if you can think of a child that has witnessed a trauma or has been abused or doesn't know how to handle something, and this is just basically what children go through in this world, um, what do? They retreat to fantasy. They turn to themselves. They have an imaginary friend, or they'll talk to themselves. So basically, the ego structure is using its own intelligence to answer its own problems, but it only has a very limited framework to do that with. And it is not very logical at 5 or 6 when it's making these decisions. So it's making a strategy of defense based on its limited understanding. So it's talking to itself. What do I do? What do I do? What's going on? And it's okay. We're gonna take care of it. It's gonna be okay. You know. But it's your own light, all distorted there. So eventually, once awakening starts to happen, that light starts to shine through those tangles and dissolve them and dissolve them and dissolve them until eventually it's just the original structure again. And at some point, that will even get pulled back into the higher structure. The structure will remain, but it will grow into the higher light structure and merge with the monadic structure again. But not to be erased, to be integrated. Both aspects remain. All aspects remain in the Creator always. Everything remains. Every civilization that you think is lost still remains and goes on, not just in a frozen like history way, like you can go back and visit it because the past is now and all that. It remains in the sense that it goes on in its own dimension. The Mayans are still advancing their civilization. There's still an Atlantis that was never destroyed in a parallel reality that is explored. Everything, every civilization. Nothing is ever lost in the Creator or in creation. So, all right. So that was a bit off topic, but I wanted to explain that that way anyways. Okay. Now, if we look at those light beams and at the level of the ego, see, it's not just the one structure, it's actually projected into multiple dimensions and experiences of you, plus the 5-body system, Okay, you got it. You got it. It's a cat. Scratching the side of the window. So what I said in the other video was that the men and the women's emotional body was switched. Now, first of all, and I tried to correct this, but I meant masculine and feminine because it doesn't actually matter the physical gender. You could be a woman with a complete masculine framework, your energy bodies, your mind, all of it, basically. Maybe not to the totality and extent that someone with a matching male body would be, but enough that you should be considered a man, and how you are advised spiritually, or how you are like in therapy or anything like that. If anyone was to look at you, they would and try to figure out a framework of treatment, should basically consider that person a man. And the same goes the other way. There are men with complete feminine frameworks. So yeah, well, I was talking about masculine and feminine frameworks, but in general, so they say that the brain of a human is grossly out of proportion for the rest of the body. Meaning, if you look at the rest of the animal kingdom, the rest of the world, do you see that as long as they have food, that they basically are stress free? Like, unless something's chasing them, unless they have food, they're stress free. And some humans are like, well, they just don't know any better. They don't know better. They don't know enough to worry. They don't know enough to stress stuff they're not going to be able to control anyways. They don't know enough to drive themselves crazy. They don't know enough to not make nuclear bombs. They don't know enough to not pollute their own home. It seems to me they know quite a bit more than humans. And here's the thing. It's going to be really hard for a lot of people, most people that hear this video won't even probably fully accept what I'm saying right now. They may accept it on the mind, but they won't accept it as truth within all their cells, that you're not more intelligent than a cat or a dog. You're not. This is a different, like, first of all, and I'm not talking about your soul. I'm not talking about your spirit. I'm not talking about your ultimate nature. I'm talking about you as a human, me as a human, okay? Human intelligence, the human way of thinking about things is not more intelligent than the intelligence of a cat. It is not. It's just not true. It's not more intelligent than the intelligence of an elephant. It is not. It is not true. And if it is true, like I said, it's because of the human's higher capabilities, what they were designed for, what they were meant to be. But it is not, those things are not even manifest in humanity in its current form. They're only beginning to be. So third density humans, the way they were less intelligent than nearly every other form of life on this planet. Which is precisely the reason they're destroying the planet and themselves. Duh. I mean, now most humans would dispute that. Even seeing the proof that only humans do ludicrous, insane things, that only the humans on this planet have ever picked up a weapon that could destroy the whole world, have designed it, and then actually thought to use it on themselves, because the rest of the animal kingdom knows it is connected to the all that is, knows it is connected to source. So the average human has no understanding of what their intelligence even is. I will attempt to explain it in a very simple way. The intelligence of, let's say an ant or a bee, okay? The humans know that these intelligence, they can solve problems far beyond what their brain capacity says. How? Well, they know it's because they have a collective mind, or they think. They must be communicating. The whole thing's a brain, that's why, together. Okay, that's partly true. But it's really because they are connected to source intelligence. So if they need to solve a problem, they just ask, how do we solve this? What do we do? And guess what? They get inspiration from higher self. Every animal out here is plugged into higher self, except some of the pets who have developed human personalities and started to think in human ways. But all the ones that exist in nature, they're plugged into source. They can talk to their higher selves anytime they need to. So they don't need a brain. They don't need another form of intelligence to guide them here, because they're not cut off from ultimate intelligence. Now, human intelligence, third density human intelligence, is a distortion of that infinite intelligence, and an extremely limited one. You can't get dumber than that. It's as dumb as possible to be. It's the dumbest. Forgetting what you are, losing your infinite intelligence, and then not only that, but bringing this intelligence down to a finite intelligence, and then taking on the distortions of others until that intelligence works against itself in 1,000 ways, is the least intelligent situation you will ever be in as an infinite soul. There you go. In the same way that more than likely, this is the hardest world you'll ever be on. Or one of them. So if you ever thought about hell, or you ever worried about it, well, you did it. You just went through it. You know, Creator's not going to make like a hell. Like they exist in the way that anything within infinity exist. It's all there to be explored. And believe it or not, some of us will explore it. Some of us will want to explore the dark. That's fine. It's fine. There is no judgment within the creation, within the real creation. All right, how do I get back to the original point of this? Okay. So, I don't know what I was just talking about, and I don't know why. But, so the mind, I was talking about the mind being grossly overdeveloped. So we don't, because the brain is so overpowering us, because we have this extra layer of mind that's arguing with us, that's like distorting our reality. Okay, now first of all, here's the thing. This is where the situation splits for the feminine perspective and the man perspective. So for the women, if you haven't figured it out yet, the man's emotional body is completely locked up and controlled by his mind. The mind is using a barter, stick and carrot system of manipulation to get what it thinks it needs, what it wants, by allowing through certain emotions. It uses anger and fear as the prime emotional tools. But after that, it will allow through bits of love, bits of sympathy and other types of emotions too from the emotional body. When the mind, that's why for the man, they realize if I can silence this thing, if I stop listening to this thing, I'm free. That's where the stranglehold is. Suddenly I can feel. Suddenly my heart opens up, my chakras open up, I can start to feel again. I can start to decide from here without this thing telling me what to do. Okay? But when I say that to a good bit of women, a large group of women, while they understand what I mean from observing men, they don't seem to understand. They're like, well, why? Some people have thoughts like that, just chattering all the time, telling them. Now, some women understand exactly what I mean, but some women don't. Okay, if you don't understand, if you're like, well, my mind is pretty quiet. That's not what causes the thing. I can be like really upset and have all these issues and things I got to process, and my mind's not saying anything. So if you don't see that as the key, as the end all to all your problems, meaning for the man, it is. Because that without that thing telling us there's a problem, there is no other problem. Well, that should be the solution for the woman too, except it doesn't actually work that way in experience. So again, if you don't understand, if that doesn't seem like the ultimate solution to you, if that doesn't make sense, if it seems like there's something missing, it's because the woman's emotional body is first experienced. And the mind and ego and the conflict, the ego that's in conflict, the what I mean is not all of the vehicle is a distortion to you. Some of it was designed by your soul. So that ego is the vehicle you're supposed to be experiencing life with. The other stuff is the stuff getting in the way of that. The other people's stuff. Well, that stays behind the emotional body in the woman so that she can experience these emotions all the time. Love, sadness, anger, joy, all the different variations of it. And what she learns spiritually is how to process these things, what it means, how to not let it rule her, okay? And how to let it go and all that. But what she doesn't find is the source of the negative emotions, the belief that spawned it. Every negative emotion has a belief that spawned it. Because the emotions are primary, because you deal with them so much, you actually a lot of times during negative emotions will not even be aware of the thought that it was there. It was whispering somewhere in the back. He doesn't love you. He doesn't love you. but the emotions are felt so strong that they literally won't be aware of the thought, he doesn't love you, that caused it all. And the whisperer of that thought, he doesn't love you. Don't trust him. You know, for the man, it'll be like, he doesn't love you. Man, shut. That girl doesn't love you. Man, fuck this. We're out of here. We're out of here. We're out of here. Fuck this. Fuck this. Fuck this. Fuck this. That's literally what's going on in the man's head. The woman's like sitting in this sea of negative emotions, and then back there it's like, he doesn't love you. No, we're not doing that. See? So it literally is much easier to miss that voice is the cause. Now, that's basically what I explained in the first video. Here's a different way of explaining it. The actual reason I made this one. So when this whole awakening, this great awakening is happening, and in the West, as we started to look at systems like Hinduism and yoga and the esoteric, even Christian systems and stuff, we developed this term non-duality as we realized that all creation is one, right? We all started to come to this awareness, and now there's a whole movement of non-duality. And what does non-duality say, right? Everything is one, beyond all male and female, masculine, negative, or masculine, feminine, negative, positive, right? Okay. So that tells us that you know, both polarities are actually one thing, right? But that doesn't mean that one of the polarities isn't the whole thing. Like, okay, like it's like we from this position of being in a masculine framework or a feminine framework say, okay, there's my feminine other half, and source is the combination of both of those. So these two things are inherently equal and all that. But there is another way to think about it. What if source is a feminine vibration? What if source is the goddess? What if source is a feminine vibration, everything we know as a feminine vibration, this nurturing, this loving vibration, this accepting, encompassing, life-giving vibration? What if the masculine vibration is a distortion of that? What if off that original wave of light, the masculine split as a channel of that, as a side channel of that? Is that not possible? And so in that case, the unbalance within each person, well, I'm not going to say this part. Don't worry about that. Each person, that would only make sense for me. Or each person will have to decide that. So forget I said it. Yeah. But that could also be the situation, right? Anyways, love and light.